So, I had a talk with a woman named Neely. She runs a group, and I also had a talk with a therapist on certain topics. And I want to share more from a rabbi I've mentioned before, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitch Rebbe, on a parsha. And I also want to bring in Rav Kook. And then I have a few other, there was like a WhatsApp group I'm in, and then a few other sources. And I think it's going to be very interesting today. So, first of all, I had a conversation with Neely about family bridges, old and new. So, make this comfortable for me. Neely ran a group called Living, she's taking a sabbatical, but Living Deeply with a Sacred Text. And we each got a verse, and we would explore it as a portal. And there was a year where I got new ones every month. But for many of them, I was doing it like for the whole year. So, it's okay not to love me dearly, just don't hurt me. And I had a tendency as a single woman without close family to blur the line between parents and siblings, husband and, I was thinking of Michael. He was the middle family between the old family I had to accept and release, and the new family to come that I can open to and prepare to welcome. And there's this idea of like being a stray cat, the claws, the sharp defensive. And then therapy gives tools how to file and refine these nails, these sharp claws. I see Michael's potential. This is a man that I feel like in some ways I must have been addicted to, but also like trying to save him. And I felt like a stray cat. I had felt homeless, and he was homeless. And even though I wasn't actually homeless, like in the physical world, it was like this homelessness. Feeling homeless. Even though I had places to live and people, it was more like this sense of like just not, call it also a lot to do with safety. And about enabling, like when you have to live with someone, you have to like live for them. You don't get to live for yourself. It's not like you're home. You don't go home to relax and catch up on yourself. So I saw his potential and also the reality. I could be his friend, his family, but I'm clear that I became clear. I wasn't always that I need a husband to be a wife for someone where I won't get hurt. So it's not stopping to care, but freeing both of us up, accepting where the person is at versus where I want them to be. And also recognizing I'm ready for a new kind of family where my needs are met for wellness. Safety and trust. So both people have to feel safe and trust. And if he's going to keep, let's say, acting like a stray cat, then he doesn't feel safety and trust. Talking about, just this idea of like wellness and talking about home, really. And basically like kindness, trust, benefit of the doubt. There's a big idea of benefit of the doubt. Judging from the side of merit. It's really the same thing. And respectful communication. So respect really and boundaries, respect, boundaries, and honoring the boundaries. And so that was a talk with Neely that I had. And then with Tamar Carruthers, we talked about how when you absorb, enabling is robbing someone else of the consequences to their behavior and choices. And when we absorb the consequences or don't follow through with our boundaries and expectations, we might keep secrets about someone or hide an abuser's actions from the public view. We might provide excuses for their violence or rage, or complete tasks, pay their bills, give money for unwise spending, paying their debts, taking the blame, providing resources, not giving them a chance to earn their own, avoiding problematic topics or the person completely. And then, basically, I was in a women's WhatsApp group, and we were talking about responsible, healthy expectations of others. So, in terms of sharing that, when I was previously asking other folks subconsciously for was to make me happy and good enough and important and give me what I need and control and security and protect me. But what I now consciously know that humans can give me is actually opportunities to be of service to God, get closer to God, see God running the world, trust God's plan, see God's perfection, notice what God is providing for me, feeling joy as I learn and grow. And I want to talk about from Stephanie Carlin. She talks about what are creative people's fears. And this is important because I think if we don't nurture our creativity, we might end up feeling destructive. So I guess there's a reason, like, why we destroy, why destructive. And it's because we might be afraid of success and responsibility. We might be afraid of forever staying the lone wolf. We might be afraid of being attractive, sexy, or desired. We might be afraid of being canceled. And we might be afraid of controlling our power. And there's a barrier to achieving goals. Basically, I had a talk with Michael. So before I go into the barrier of achieving goals, I want to talk about how I had a talk with Michael about knowing versus learning. So godly nature to some means knowing everything already and not being exposed to the unknown. So it's just a remembering, but actually God is infinite and can create new and unknown things to learn. And at the same time, God knows already. So God can lift everything, yet also can make a rock too heavy for God to lift, because God could do everything. So there's this sense of like being limited, being really limited. So the divine and limitations meet. It's like a bridge again, right? So creativity and destructions meet. Homelessness versus family meet, something like that. And I want to share from the two rabbis, and then from Dr. Karen Purvis, so about playful learning, and Victor Toski. So Lubavitcher Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson, he talks about Vayakel, chapter 36, verse 8. Vayakel, inside of the 5 books of Moses, we say the Torah. And this comes from Sefer HaMaimarim, 5708, the year 5708. The Jewish year currently right now is 5785, so, and we're in 2025. So 5785 minus, let's do this math. So 5785 minus 57. 77 years ago. So let's do 2025 minus 77. 75 would be 2050. So, no, sorry, 1950. Let's see, 2050. 1950. So we add 2, it would be 1952. The material model, the materials that allude to the 4 bases of emotional relationship with God. One, we have scarlet wool, because the chapter of Vayakel talks about the materials for the tabernacle. So the scarlet wool, this is fire, red, fiery love, from contemplating his infinity, overcome with passionate desire to escape the world's limitations, to know and merge with him after realizing the extent to which God is beyond creation and is the true reality. Then we have turquoise wool. This is the color of the sky, experiencing God's majesty, contemplating God's infinity, and focusing our own comparable insignificance, filled with awe, focusing on how incomparably insignificant we really are. Then we have purple wool, a blend of blue and red, which is love and awe, to pity, compounded of love and anger, love for the ideal and anger over how the ideal goes unfulfilled. Specifically, we pity the divine soul's plight of having to live so spiritually distant from its natural home of God's presence, our divine soul, each one inside. Then we have 4, linen, white, basic, inherent love of God, above and beyond rationality, capable. That's where we become capable of self-sacrificing for God's honor. On basically this, and it's an expressed invincible bond with God. I want to share from Rav Kook. This is 5134, Orot HaKodesh, independent intuition. It's not the intent of any influence from outside self that coming into inner being, whether of a secular or a holy source, to silence. So basically any outside influence, whether it's coming in from outside self, the intention of any influence coming from outside the self coming into our inner being, whether it's holy or secular source, the intention is not to silence the spiritual self, or to mute our independent intuition. The intent is to wash with a flow of light, to be absorbed in essence. Thus, independent sense of things will grow even stronger, our independent sense. And when a desolated sense of internal shoddiness seems everything's intention, when there's this desolated sense of internal shoddiness, like we feel shoddy, SHODDY inside, it does seem like everything's intuition from the outside is to abrade an independent sense of reality, to make crumple or totter, to become short-tempered. We end up becoming short-tempered. We cease to grow, and this is like this. It might even. I can't put it into other words. Rav Kook says it the way it should be said. The holy and secular are basically in abundance together. And they are in abundance. The holy and the secular are in abundance, and together influence our spirit and enrich. And when they're integrated, okay. So we take what's fitting from the holy, the light of the life and inner character, and from the secular, the container and the superficial understanding, the basis for grasping the content and material, for analogies and explanations, contexts, and to get the ways of the world and good character traits. So again, from the holy, we get the life we get the light of life and the inner character. From the secular, we get a container. We get context and explanations, analogies, and the ways of the world and character traits. We get sort of the details and text, the context, the textual sort of information. The last two things I want to share is from Dr. Karen Purvis, playful learning. So scientists have, this is amazing. This is how we could say, this is incredibly brilliant. Scientists have recently determined it takes about 400 repetitions to create a new synapse in the brain, unless it's done with play, in which case it takes only approximately 10 to 20 repetitions. In other words, if you would practice something 400 times, you would get to know it really well, right? Super well. Say muscle memory, in your sleep. Now, what if you did it 10 to 20 times in a playful way? It would be, so it's like 13 months of days for change, being serious, versus 2 to 3 times a month by being silly and playful in practice and efforts. So it would take 13 months of change if you were serious in order to make a change, like 13 months, 400, because we have 365 days, right? So it would take about 400 days if every day you were doing the same thing to try to get it to become a practice, but you did it seriously, versus 10 to 20, so 2 to 3 times a month you could make new changes if you did it in a silly, playful way in your practice and your efforts. And the final thing I want to talk about is about barrier to achieving our goals is when we don't explore beyond our boundaries. Now, we all know, okay, we have to get past the comfort zone, but what is the comfort zone? What's outside of that? Let's say let's say we're facing forward and we get outside of our comfort zone. What can we expect so that we know what's coming? Fear zone. When we're most afraid is when we are we're actually going just past our boundary, right? What happens after we get past the fear zone? Learning. Now we learn. Outside the fear zone, we start to learn. What happens when we are outside the learning zone? What happens when we cross through learning? We grow. The learning grows us. What happens when we pass through the growth zone? We meet our goals. So I'm gonna stop here, and so we'll call this like the bridges, the bridge to the goals, bridges to the goals. And whatever your goal is, any of the things we spoke about, I hope that it comes true for you. And so we're calling a holy secular intuition. Holy and secular even could have a bridge, right? Holy and secular intuition. And we'll stop there. All right. All the best. Good night. Bye.